There are 3 cities in Peru that were inhabited in Inca times that are still inhabited today. Cusco is one of them. Another city that was inhabited in Inca times and still inhabited today is a town called Choquiconcha, which means gold storage. And it is a small town way in the mountains. The 3rd town that was inhabited in Inca times and is still inhabited today is this town, Ollantaytambo. Ollantaytambo is a very special town. It's a megalithic town. Perhaps it was built many thousands of years ago. It has many great doorways and super walls. Follow me and we'll explore some of the alleys of Ollantaytambo. Check out some of these huge cornerstone blocks here. It's truly megalithic city, Ollantaytambo. Yeah, you see some really well-constructed megalithic doorways here at the village of Ollantaytambo. And like in Inca times, water flowed down the streets, just like here. And every street, in fact, in Ollantaytambo had man-made streams flowing down, either along the side of the street or in the middle of the street. We've hiked up the terraces to nearly the top of the Sun Temple here at Ollantaytambo. And it's this section where we start to see the awesome megalithic stones, some of them weighing 100 tons or more. In an earlier episode on ancient technology in Peru and Bolivia, we showed how the builders of Ollantaytambo were the same builders who built Tiwanaku. And that was because of the keystone cuts that are found both at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku and here at Ollantaytambo. So we've returned here to Ollantaytambo in Peru to look at more evidence of ancient technology. So follow me through this ancient fortress to look at the credible evidence for ancient machining. So here at the top of the Sun Temple is the famous megalithic wall, and all around us are giant blocks of red granite, andesite. They've been hewn from a quarry up on this mountain many miles away and somehow dragged across a river and then up on top of this hill. And yet the builders never finished their construction, and these giant 100-ton blocks are still lying here unfinished, and they haven't been put into their final place. Something happened here that stopped the construction. Some cataclysm, some end of a civilization where the builders just abandoned their work, and what we see left are these giant stones scattered around here at Ollantaytambo. As we come around here on the east side of the Sun Temple, again we see the large granite blocks, but then we see the crummy filler blocks with mud. Another giant block. This is one of the largest. It has these unusual knobs coming out. We don't know what that's for. This block too is notched here for another gigantic granite block to be fitted, but it's not here. Instead, we have this crummy filler blocks. This is really Inca construction, and what was meant to be here originally, and probably was, were other big blocks of perfectly cut granite fitted into this notch, coming down here in a narrow piece of finely cut granite. But that's not what we see. Instead, we see this crummy Inca construction filler, more of it here and here. This is the Inca construction. But these giant blocks are the pre-Inca megalithic builders construction. This is the same people who built Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. We can really see here at Ollantaytambo how Machu Picchu and Saqsaywaman and Cuzco are all pre-Inca. They're built thousands of years before the Incas. Then they were destroyed, even perhaps several times in wars or cataclysmic earth changes. Later, the Incas did occupy these buildings and repaired them as best they could with this kind of construction. Here's the most famous wall here at the Sun Temple of Ollantaytambo. Giant 100-ton blocks of granite. And what's so unusual are these thin strips of granite that are filling in between the giant blocks. My theory is that at one time, most of the building had these giant blocks with thin strips of finely cut granite between them. But many of these thin strips have either been pried out by people or through earthquake activity, leaving gaps between the large blocks, although not here. And then they were later filled in with the crummy small stones that we see on many sides of the Sun Temple here. Come around to this side and we'll see what is a very unusual keystone cut that is part of the wall here, but it's a vertical keystone cut, so it can't be in its original place. It's a block that must have been moved and then later filled in. Follow me. This wall was destroyed at some point, but then what happened was it was rebuilt by the megalith builders themselves. They, for instance, put this large block into place, and curiously, it has also a T-shaped keystone cut right here. However, this can't have been the original spot for this stone, or certainly it wasn't meant to be here, because these T-shaped keystone cuts would have had to have been on a flat surface so that the molten metal would have been poured into the keystone cut, and there always has to be a corresponding keystone cut on another block. So it appears that this building has been rebuilt twice. Once by the megalith builders themselves, who put this block in a second place from where it had originally been, but then later the Incas filled in this space between the large blocks with these small, crummy stones and even mud filling here. This weighs so much that even today, a modern construction company in Peru couldn't really move or build with such giant blocks like this. And you have to ask yourself, why would the Incas or anyone want to build with such giant blocks when it would have been so much easier for them to build with these small blocks like we see here? It appears that what would be so difficult for us was somehow easy for these builders. Did they have some kind of levitation, some kind of anti-gravity that could vibrate these crystalline blocks, make them weightless, move them around effortlessly? Even then, they would have needed to probably cut these blocks with giant saws, some kind of power tools, in order to build in this way. That's how we would build in a modern situation today. But yet, the lifting of giant blocks like this would require huge cranes and other massive infrastructure. It really begs the question, why are they trying to build in such a difficult way? Was it actually easy for them? Here's another one of the giant granite blocks here at Ollantaytambo. And this is the telltale T-shaped cut, known as a keystone cut. This is what we see at Pumapunku, also at Tiwanaku, and we see it here at Ollantaytambo. These unusual cuts are made in these giant blocks, and another corresponding T-cut would be on another giant block here, and then molten metals are poured into these keystone cuts. This is a kind of unusual architecture and construction that we see all over the world on certain megalithic blocks. Not only here in Peru, but also in Bolivia. We see it in Egypt, in Angkor Wat. We see it in Kham and Mai Son in Vietnam. We see it in India and even in Greece and Turkey. This is the sign of the ancient megalithic builders who were building around the world. These are the blocks here that on the lower terrace that have been blown apart from the walls. And look at this. Here's another T-shaped keystone cut. I hadn't seen this one before. It too is on a finely cut block. So this block, which has been nicely cut and dressed, very sharp corners, very smooth, and we see another keystone cut here at this far edge, right here. It too would have been, when originally placed, would have been turned so the keystone cuts would have been on a flat surface, and then they would have had to have been fitted to another giant granite block with also a T-shaped keystone cut on it. These blocks themselves are evidence that the Incas did not build Ollantaytambo, but that this site was built thousands of years before the Incas, And the Incas later occupied this site and rebuilt as best they could some of the walls. Here behind me on this mountain, across the Urubamba River that goes down to Machu Picchu, we see the mountain where the quarry is located. Several miles away, up here, there are giant, squared, rectangular blocks of granite. They've been cut from the mountainside. They've been hewn. There's even evidence of giant saws being in use. Many of the blocks are still up there. They were never moved from the quarry, or they weren't moved very far. Yet, hundreds of these giant granite blocks were dragged from the top of this mountain down a series of trails, across the river, through these fields, and then up on top of this mountain to be placed here at the site of the Sun Temple. Yet many of these stones were never put into place, or conversely, they were blasted apart from their walls and scattered apart. Like below me, you can see many giant squared granite blocks. This too, in my mind, is evidence of the ancient wars of the past and the cataclysmic changes that occurred thousands of years ago. Shortly, we'll be leaving on horseback and we'll be crossing the river, and it will take us many hours. We'll be following this trail on the other side of the river along this hillside. We'll be switchbacking along the trails high up onto this mountain where the quarry is located, about 1,000 feet up. There we'll see many of these huge granite blocks, many of them apparently cut by giant saws. It's amazing acoustics here too, where sound carries a great deal. Even it was possible that sound was used for levitating and moving some of these blocks. Some of the finest stone construction work in the world, seen right here. From here, we'll be taking this Inca trail up to the top of the mountain, or near it, to the great megalithic quarry here at Ollantaytambo. It's there that we'll see evidence of ancient machining, including evidence of a giant saw, and we'll also see a huge round stone wheel. So now we're saddled up and we're headed up to Chakikata. Chakikata is the great megalithic quarry up on the mountain. So we're here at Chakikata, the great megalithic quarry on the mountain above Ollantaytambo. Here you can see the giant blocks of granite scattered around on the hillside behind me. In a few moments, we're going to look at some of these giant stones that have been squared, ready to be moved down the mountain. Some of these stones weigh 100 tons. The best stones were already removed from here and taken down the mountain, across the Urubamba River, and then up the other side to the Sun Temple at Ollantaytambo. What we're going to see now is amazing. We'll see evidence of giant saws that were cutting the stones. We'll see a huge round stone, proving that the ancient peoples of the Andes knew about the wheel, and in fact made giant stone wheels. There are a number of enigmas here at the quarry at Ollantaytambo. How did they cut the stones? Were they using power tools, as we surmise? And then, after they had squared off these giant 100-ton stones, how were they able to move them down the mountain? To us, it seems incredibly difficult that they did any of this. And yet we almost have to look at it as if it was easy for them, that they had some kind of levitation, some sort of anti-gravity means of levitating the stones, making them weightless, and then moving them down the mountain. So follow me now as we look at some of the megalithic stones here at Cachicata. Here we are, part of the rock scree at the quarry at Ollantaytambo, and our guide Wilson is showing us a cave with some Inca mummies in it. He's saying that there was an earthquake here about 15 years ago that caused some of these rocks to come down, and then this cave was discovered. The mummies inside are several hundred years old, probably from around the time of the conquest. Here, let's have a look. Here's an unusual stone here at the quarry at Ollantaytambo. This one here, you can see, very smooth here. This is one of the stones that I believe was cut by the giant saws that they used here at Ollantaytambo. There's really no other way that a stone like this could be sliced so smooth and such a large piece. We'll see in a minute another stone in which the giant saws were cutting at it, only they stopped. This is a piece of granite that was sliced off, just like a piece of bread by a giant saw. Here's another stone that's been sliced by the giant saw. You can see here how the saw was cutting in. This is a piece that broke off, actually. Had a natural crack in it. But right here is where the saw was cutting into it. For reasons we don't know, they never moved these stones. But of course, many hundreds of these giant stones were moved down the mountain and across the Urubamba River to the great fortress at Ollantaytambo. This is a natural cave here up at the quarry, and stones have been piled up here just to make a shelter for a llama or alpaca herder. But right in this area, according to our guide Wilson, there's a cache of Inca treasure, some kind of a gold hoard that was buried with one of the Inca royalty or something like that. The Incas would make gold figurines of llamas and peanuts and even corn and bury it with the important people. And according to our guide Wilson, all of the stones at the Sun Temple of Ollantaytambo have come from this quarry, and this is a special type of stone that's only found here around this mountain. It's not found actually in the town of Ollantaytambo. It's a type of crystalline granite. And this kind of granite is not just very hard and heavy, but it's a kind of a granite that would resonate as well. Tiny quartz crystals are embedded in all of these stones. And in fact, that may have been one of the reasons that these stones were chosen, is because of its crystalline quality. This kind of stone perhaps could be levitated more easily with the anti-gravity devices that I suspect that they had in order to move the really large stones. Here at the quarry is one of the most unusual stones. In fact, according to our guide, this is unique, and you do not find a circular round stone like this down at the Sun Temple of Ollantaytambo. But clearly this was made here. It's got a hole in the middle for an axle. Almost looks like some giant Fred Flintstone stone wheel or something. The front of it here is very smooth. It's like the giant saw blade just came down and sliced this stone. Then it was machined and bashed into a circle. One of the strange things about this stone too is it's said that the Incas and other ancient peoples of the Andes didn't know about the wheel. And yet, here at the quarry at Ollantaytambo, they made a giant stone wheel that weighs many tons. You have to wonder what this stone wheel was for. Was it actually part of the way that they moved some of the giant 100-ton stones? Why the axle in the middle? Perhaps it was to be a grinding stone in a mill, as often used in Europe and other places. And Wilson here is saying that this round tubular stone is an axle. Here, Wilson, try and pick this up. Here, yeah. So was this part of the axle that was meant for this stone? Perhaps there were two. What would this have been? Some giant megalithic stone cart or something? It's baffling, really, what the purpose of this stone was and even how it was made. Now, just right over here, we'll see the amazing giant stone that still has the saw marks from the huge circular blade that was slicing these giant granite blocks like a loaf of bread. So it looks like with the giant saws here at the quarry, they began to square off this massive piece of 100-ton granite, even 200 tons. They began cutting the face here. They also began squaring it off this side. It's another beginnings of a saw mark here, perfectly straight. Here's the main piece where they again began to slice off about an 8-inch thin piece of granite right here. And you can still see the remains of the saw mark. Also, the lichen patches on this stone are huge. In my estimation, this stone has been sitting here in the quarry for many thousands of years. So we've seen quite a bit here at the great quarry at Ollantaytambo. Evidence of ancient machining. Giant stones that were sliced with saws and never moved down from the quarry. It's getting late now, so we'll have to start down. Here's even another stone that was sawn off, perhaps from this block. It too was never moved from the quarry, though it was squared and ready to go. At some point, the building and all of the quarrying here just came to a stop thousands of years ago. Perhaps it was the end of a great war or some natural cataclysm that just stopped all of the work here at Ollantaytambo. These are some of the giant walls at Saqsaywaman, the megalithic fortress above Cuzco. The stone used here is limestone rather than granite, as at Ollantaytambo. In some areas, like here, earthquakes have begun to split the stone open, pulling it apart. But originally, and even in most cases today, the stones are perfectly fitted together. Plus they have this curious pillow shaping. We see this in other areas of the world, including the underwater stones at Bimini in the Bahamas, known as the Bimini Road of Atlantis. What's interesting too to note here at Saqsaywaman with these massive walls is how they've done corners with stones that are coming around the corner, still perfectly fitted in these polygonal jigsaw patterns. You see here in some places where some of the megalithic stones are missing, and modern Peruvian archaeologists have had to reconstruct parts of the wall. Yet even though today's archaeologists have at their disposal modern equipment, cranes, modern power saws and things like that, they still use very small stones to build, where in fact they would be replacing perhaps one or maybe two giant stones. Yet they've used probably somewhere between 20 and 30 small stones. So it begs the question, why were the megalith builders using such large stones when even today's architects and engineers are using very small stones to replace it? One of the reasons why is building with such large stones is extremely difficult, even for today's engineers and architects. And so in fact, they're building as we would today with much smaller stones. It makes me wonder, was it somehow easy for the megalith builders to build with such large stones? It was easy for them to quarry these stones. It was easy for them to cut these stones. And then it was easy for them to move these stones and place them in these giant walls that we see today. Many archaeologists think that Saqsaywaman was a pre-Inca building. And just as today in Cuzco, the modern Spanish are inhabiting buildings that were built long time before them, and the Spanish did not build those buildings. It's also a theory that the Incas also inhabited buildings that were already built, buildings such as Saqsaywaman. This is one of the most famous walls at Saqsaywaman, and it's famous because carved into the wall appears to be a serpent. And in fact, there are 7 holes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's thought by some people that what this corresponds to is the Kundalini energy that's talked about by the ancient Hindus. And the Kundalini energy goes through the spine and corresponds to 7 chakras in our body, and that this is the serpent with the chakras carved into this stone. One of the strange stories about Saqsaywaman is that part of the lost treasure of the Incas from the ancient sun temple, the Coricancha in Cuzco, was taken into a secret tunnel system inside the mountain of Saqsaywaman, where we are now. And in fact, this area is a newly excavated part of Saqsaywaman. I'm already underground here, and this is apparently one of the ancient tunnels that once riddled the entire megalithic fortress of Saqsaywaman. So follow me, and we'll go inside the tunnel system of this ancient megalithic fortress. Now you can see how this tunnel here at Saqsaywaman is also lined with stones. And here the roof is caved in, so we can see the sky. But then, as you continue farther, we have the roof once again. And we're clearly inside of a man-made tunnel system. See, you can see the blocks of stone. You can see stone up here that's part of the roof of the tunnel. At one time, this tunnel may have led to the lost treasure of the Incas, but today it dead ends down here inside this dark passageway. Here on this backside of the Saqsaywaman fortress, you see also these curious stones that are carved out. Some kind of like seats are made that looks almost like the throne for a giant or something. There's other places around here where there's upside down stairways. It's very well cut, the stone here. It almost looks like someone has taken a power tool or some kind of laser cutter and just cut out the stone, almost as if they were practicing. Other areas seem as if they're for other giant blocks, such as this one, to be placed into various niches and things like that, where part of some structure would have been originally and now has been completely dismantled, possibly in some kind of cataclysmic earth changes or even some catastrophic war. There's another area here in the back of Saqsaywaman where it appears like an upside down staircase has been cut into this rock. This area too, very straight walls right here. I mean, you have to ask yourself, what were they doing here? Why even carve this rock like this? It's like this rock even was perhaps not where it is now and has been turned over in some topsy-turvy cataclysm or something that's flipped this rock over. You see more of the cuts here. Down over here too, it's been cut. It's really pretty baffling, really. You have to ask yourself, why are they doing it? And then once again, it looks as if they're using power tools and saws to cut it at the various angles and articulate it so finely as we can see. This is Cuzco, the ancient capital of the Incas. Just to the north of Cuzco is the Sacred Valley, and this has the cities of Calca, Yucay, Urubamba, and Ollantaytambo. Through the Sacred Valley goes the Urubamba River. That river flows farther down into the high jungle to Machu Picchu, also a megalithic city like Cuzco. All around Cuzco are many fascinating megalithic sites. It's one of the great cities of the world, and today it's the #1 tourist spot in all of South America. We're here at the main plaza in Ica, Peru. And here in this plaza is a central plaza here in Ica, Peru. And in fact, one of the strangest museums in the world is the Museum of Dr. Cabrera right here. Follow me as we go inside. It's closed most of the time and it's only open now by special appointment. Most of the people here in Ica have heard of this museum, but they rarely go inside here. Follow me into Dr. Cabrera's Cabinet of Curiosities, one of the strangest museums in the world. Inside these 5 rooms of Dr. Cabrera's museum are thousands, tens of thousands, even maybe hundreds of thousands of rocks, carved stones, petrified objects, and carved onto them are some of the most bizarre scenes imaginable. Dinosaurs, people doing surgical operations, people looking in telescopes, oddball animals and other scenes. It's an incredible collection of weirdness and impossible things. Let's have a look. Here's the doctor himself. He passed away some years ago, and now it is his wife who still runs this private museum here in Ica. Dr. Cabrera would sit here at his desk among his many stones. He was the ancestor of one of the founders of this city in Peru. Dr. Cabrera was a very well-known citizen here in Ica. He was a surgeon, was a wealthy landowner, and he was a collector of the very strange rocks that are found nearby. These rocks in Ica were actually found at a nearby town called Ollantaytambo. They come from a secret underground area, according to the doctor. And some of the rocks include bizarre scenes of prehistoric animals, humans interacting with animals, other scenes of people with telescopes performing operations, including heart surgery and tree panning and things like that. Many of the rocks are very small, others are medium-sized, while other rocks are huge boulders like this one. Some of the scenes, we can't really tell what people are doing. Others, it's quite clear that they're performing some operation, looking at the stars, or perhaps attacking what would appear to be dinosaurs and things. Let's look at this one here. What seems to be a brontosaurus or some other kind of dinosaur. A man with an axe is battling it. Dr. Cabrera himself believed that many of these stones were somehow created during the Mesozoic period, a time 60 million years ago when humans did not exist according to the mainstream, but dinosaurs did. Here in Dr. Cabrera's office, he's got many photographs of his expeditions and some of the famous people who've come here to meet him and see his museum, and including Shirley MacLaine, the actress here, photo taken in probably the late 1970s with Dr. Cabrera. Here he sits at his desk. This is only a small portion of the many thousands of rocks he has. Here also we see what seems to be some prehistoric animal. Also another man here riding on some kind of stegosaurus. Skeptics have said that Dr. Cabrera was sincere, but that he was gullible, and that local peasants in the nearby village of Ollantaytambo took advantage of him, and he was quite wealthy. So he would pay them a small price for each of these rocks that they found. And so it's said that the local people actually created these rocks for the doctor. The doctor himself, though, believed that all of these rocks were genuine, although a few might have been faked. It was his belief that these stones were 60 million or 70 million years old, and that human beings had lived at a time of the dinosaurs that long ago. Other researchers who believe that the stones here in Dr. Cabrera's museum are authentic, their belief is that dinosaurs didn't become extinct 65 million years ago, and that dinosaurs somehow managed to survive down through the ages to the time of human beings, and that perhaps these stones are only 10,000 years old or 20,000 years old. And much like the Loch Ness Monster or the Mokele Mbembe in the Congo, we have stories of giant saurians living throughout the ages in small numbers and still surviving. Another curious collection that it's like Dr. Cabrera's is the strange collection of ceramics at Acambaro, Mexico. These ceramics also show people interacting with what would seem to be extinct dinosaurs. Let's go into some of the other rooms of Dr. Cabrera's strange cabinet of curiosities. One of the strange stones seems to show two people inside of a wheeled vehicle, and it's being drawn by a horse. Horses weren't known in South America until the time of the Spanish conquest, so perhaps this is an indication that these stones were made more recently. Some of the stones are figures at Nazca, such as the monkey with the spiral tail, the spider, the condor, some of the other familiar figures that we can see from the air at Nazca. Were the figures at Nazca also ancient figures from the time of the dinosaurs, as Dr. Cabrera believed? Or again, perhaps the dinosaurs lived in South America up until relatively modern times, like 10 or 20,000 years ago. Or, as many people suggest, the entire collection is a fake, a hoax that was pulled on Dr. Cabrera. Dr. Cabrera himself completely believed that all of this was real. All of it was somehow incredibly ancient. Some of Dr. Cabrera's large stones in this room seem to show the world maps with different continents. Dr. Cabrera believed that some showed where Atlantis had been and other lost continents in South America. He had his own interpretation of many of the stones, and yet a lot of them were very clear of what they showed. Prehistoric animals, people interacting with them or each other. Yet some of the stones show things that are very obscure. We don't know what their really meaning was. This is the regional museum here at Ica. Inside are artifacts from the Paracas culture, the Ica culture, the Nazca culture, including some of the most unusual skulls of cranial deformation seen anywhere in the world. Follow me inside the Ica Regional Museum. Here in the Ica Regional Museum, we see some unusual skulls, including red-haired skull here. Red-haired people being thought from Northern Europe, typically, and not here in South America. And over here we have the very strange cranial deformation that we find here all over South America, especially Peru. You can see the very elongated, deformed heads, some of the most unusual that we find here around Paracas, Nazca, and Ica. This was done by taking small babies and wrapping their head before they're cranium had fused together, and they create this elongated head, or sometimes a flattened head. And over here, we see other craniums that have been trepanned. Their heads are elongated too and deformed in many ways, but then they've had their skulls cut open while they were alive. Possibly their skulls had been damaged in battle by a mace, or perhaps it was even some kind of brain surgery because of headaches or something. And then a gold or silver plate was put onto their head, and then their cranium and skull was healed over and skin formed over the gold plates. Cranial deformation is one of the most common things around the world. Ancient peoples in Malta, Vanuatu, the Kurds in northern Iraq, in Egypt, such as Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and here in South America, did the cranial deformation, creating these cone heads. Why was this unusual technique done around the world? Modern archaeologists say it's simply a coincidence. And the fact that people on Africa and South America, even in North America, in Europe and the Middle East, all did this cranial deformation. Is there really some connection between these ancient cultures? This would mean transoceanic travel across the Pacific and the Atlantic, bringing this unusual technique of elongating the heads. And why did they do it? Why was it that ancient people wanted these strange elongated heads? Was it because they were trying to imitate some ancient people, even possibly extraterrestrials, who naturally looked like this? In many cases, like we see here, they had literally doubled the cranium capacity, thereby allowing their brains to be twice the size of ours today. Were they somehow smarter than we are and better psychic abilities? Here we have a diorama of a person being trepanned. It's quite possible that he's a conehead with cranial deformation, and for whatever reason, his scalp is being cut away and bones in his head are being cut out. Like many, he survived this ancient operation and went on to live for many years with a gold plate in his head. Here we have the rare Inca quipus. The Incas were said to not have writing. It's also said they didn't have the wheel either. What they did have were the quipu, these knotted ropes. And each knot and strand had a special meaning. They could use it for counting, for sending messages, communicating through long distances. And this was the way that the Incas kept records. Some quipus are incredibly large and long because of their complicated messages. Hiram Bingham, who discovered Machu Picchu, writes in his book that there was a legend that the Incas did have writing originally. But what happened was there was a plague going throughout the Inca Empire, and priests came to the Inca, the king, and they said that the cause of this plague was writing and the trafficking of books. At that time, according to Hiram Bingham, the Incas forbade any kind of writing and then switched to the unusual quipu system of keeping records on knotted ropes. Here at the Regional Museum in Ica is actually a copy of the Nazca lines on the Nazca Plain. So you can get kind of a good perspective on how they look. It's just a copy, but right now we're off to the real thing, the lines at Nazca. We're here now in the town of Acucaje, a small village near to Ica. This is where the stones in Dr. Cabrera's strange museum came from. I found these guys here at the local cantina, and they say they're going to show us the local house and museum, they're calling it, where Dr. Cabrera's stones came from. We're walking through the town of Acucaje with my friends. We're going to find the source of Dr. Cabrera's stones. That's our plan. We're here at a man's house in Acucaje, a very small village near to Ica, between Ica and Nazca actually. We've just met Arturo, who is the caretaker of this museum. And he says he's going to show us some of the rocks that came here from this secret place in Acucaje. And this is supposedly the origin of all the rocks that Dr. Cabrera has in his strange museum in Ica. Arturo is going to show us some of his inner rooms here.
Okay.
Wow.
Aquí pues se ha rescatado un resto fósil.
All right, what he's saying is that there is a mountain nearby here, the Cerro
Las Lomadas.
The Cerro Las Lomadas, the mountain of Las Lomadas, and there at that place are these fossils of these prehistoric animals, and he's saying they're 300 million years old. Okay, continue.
Yeah.
This is the head of a dinosaur and part of the vertebrae, and that this is a baby dinosaur here with the head and some vertebrae. Interessante. He found these fossilized vertebrae and part of a chest cavity here in a different place, but also nearby. And he's saying he found 6 fossilized dinosaur eggs, such as this one right here would be one of them. He's saying that this stone he found, and this is like Dr. Cabrera's stones, in that, yeah, it is been engraved, very similar to Dr. Cabrera's stones, and it clearly shows what is some kind of long-necked brontosaurus type dinosaur. Fire is like coming out of his mouth or something. Yeah, his tail is wrapping down around this way. Here's his body. It has the same kind of etchings as Dr. Cabrera's stones. Here's his head going out this way. So he's saying also that this stone is an authentic stone that he found. He's saying it's Neolithic. So perhaps he's saying here that people either witnessed dinosaurs here somehow in the very, very ancient times, or somehow perhaps they saw fossils of some of the dinosaurs and engraved the stone. So, Arturo,
Sí.
¿Usted no engravó esta piedra? ¿Usted?
No. Todos los restos que vemos acá en este museo son netamente originales, ¿ya? Con esto más bien acredita y refuerza que en Acucaje sí han existido piedras, debido a esta piedra que se ha podido rescatar. Es la única piedra que hasta el momento se ha podido rescatar y que se encuentra en este museo.
Okay, okay. So I asked him if he made this stone, and he's saying no. He's saying this is an authentic, original stone that he has found in this area, like these other fossils. So, Arturo,
Sí.
¿usted vendió las piedras por Dr. Cabrera en años antes?
Mi tío Basilio Uchuya. Mi tío Basilio Uchuya trabajó con el señor Cabrera. Con el señor Cabrera. Ellos, mejor que nadie, conocen su proyecto. Yo simplemente defiendo el proyecto que he hecho, yo en persona. He hecho el proyecto. Pero sí, con esto mostraría que las piedras del doctor Cabrera, de tener piedras originales, sí puede tener piedras originales. Pero lo que yo no puedo asegurar, que si todas las piedras que tiene en el museo son reales. Eso sí no puedo asegurar. Pero de haber encontrado, sí han encontrado piedras. Debido a esto que me acredita, que sí han existido. Que sí han existido piedras y hay piedras. Pero lo que en el doctor Cabrera existe en su museo, yo no puedo decir si todas son originales o no. Eso sí.
Okay, okay. So he's saying that a man before him was selling these stones to Dr. Cabrera. According to him, he thinks that many of the stones are authentic, but perhaps many are fake. He's saying he doesn't know whether all the stones in Dr. Cabrera's museum are authentic. Here's a mummy. This mummy also has red hair. Yeah, he's a red-haired mummy. This guy has quite the private collection here, and this is the last room here in Arturo's private museum, and it also contains some mummies. In fact, they also have red hair, and there are some apparently mummies of llamas and things. Also, here are some shuttles for weaving, and some ropes and things. These, you know, would be only, say, 800 years old or something like that, maybe only 500 or 600. So Arturo's got quite a collection here. Some things are 500-600 years old. Others, he says, are many, many millions of years old, including the one rock that's very similar to those in Dr. Cabrera's museum. Wow, it's pretty interesting and baffling in a way. I mean, certainly a lot of the stuff here is clearly authentic, and yet you still have to wonder about Dr. Cabrera's stones and the stone he showed us. Arturo's basically saying that the dinosaurs around here lived 65 million years ago, but that they survived down to Neolithic times, say 20,000 years ago or so, and that they got smaller and smaller, so they weren't the same giant dinosaurs. So it's his theory, which was different than Dr. Cabrera's, that people weren't living 65 million years ago, but rather dinosaurs somehow survived in this area, and that it would have been a different climate, and that people were somehow witnessing real reptiles. Well, Arturo, muchas gracias por eso. Gracias. This village and the strange artifacts that are found here are earth-shatteringly changing the history of the world and of humanity, and that of Darwin and he said Schuller and many of the paleontologists' beliefs of man and reptiles and fossilization and extinction and even of where man originated, that the secrets of all this can be found here and around this small village, and that the evidence that he has found, and Dr. Cabrera apparently put some of it in his museum, that this really changes our ideas of where we came from, where man originated. And what Arturo is basically saying is that humanity has originated in this area of Peru, and it would have been apparently even millions of years ago that this is where human beings came from and originated. So we've seen the strange museum here at Acucaje, small village near Ica. This is the village where Dr. Cabrera's bizarre collection originated from. He was paying villagers to collect these stones for him. Some of the stones apparently are authentic, while others of the stones were apparently replicas and fakes that were sold to Dr. Cabrera. We may never really know the truth of the origin of Dr. Cabrera's strange collection and how authentic or fake it was, and just exactly what Dr. Cabrera knew. That concludes it for here, and for now, we'll get back and head on the Pan American Highway, go further south to Nazca and the strange figures etched in the desert. We're here at the famous Nazca Plain. This is where the lines and geoglyphs, trapezoids, other geometric figures are etched into the desert. The Nazca Desert is covered with small black rocks, and it makes it appear very dark. The way the ancient peoples made the lines at Nazca was by scraping away this top layer of dark rocks and exposing a shallow line or groove that was very light colored. Therefore, from the air, or possibly from a nearby mountain, some of the lines and geoglyphs could be seen. And they look as light colored lines on a dark colored desert. What is really mysterious about Nazca is not so much how the lines were made, but why and who did it. One of the strange things about the Nazca lines and geoglyphs is that they're really only well seen from the air. Today, hundreds of tourists fly around the Nazca Plain every morning and afternoon to view the incredible lines and geoglyphs that are etched in an area for tens of square miles. We're on the observation tower here at Nazca, and behind me you can see part of the Nazca Plain, including one of the figures called the hands. Some researchers think that it's actually a bat. But the Nazca Plain goes for miles in many directions between the towns of Nazca and Palpa. It's a very interesting idea that these lines here at Nazca and Palpa were really meant for people to view from the air, just like we do today. Every day, hundreds of tourists get into airplanes at the Nazca airport and fly over these lines. Is it possible that in ancient times people also had flight? It's been speculated here that the ancient Peruvians actually built hot air balloons and they flew over the lines in this way. And yet, many ancient records show that people had flight. Some of the lines here at Nazca start from these rocky hills. The lines begin here and they go out for miles out into the desert. There they intersect with other lines and trapezoids. They also cross giant figures of spiders and condors and flamingos and spirals and other things. It's a giant mass of strange trapezoids, lines, and geoglyphs. And what their purpose is remains a mystery. From the top of some of these hills, you can see parts of the Nazca lines and some of the geoglyphs, but to really appreciate the vast geometric figures here at Nazca, you've really got to go up in an airplane and view them from 300 or 400 feet in the air. Well, we've been able to see portions of the Nazca lines from this hilltop, but now it's time to go to the airport and get into an airplane and fly above the many figures and mysterious lines that we can only see from the air. The Nazca lines were first discovered in 1946, when an American flyer named Paul Kossoff was doing some aerial surveys here in Peru, and it was he who first flew over the Nazca plain here and saw the lines and geoglyphs that are so famous today. Later, the famous German archaeologist Maria Reike came here to Nazca and lived here for over 30 years, studying the Nazca lines and the geoglyphs, trying to get some kind of indication of their purpose and meaning. She decided, as other researchers have, that at least part of the Nazca lines have to do with astrological symbols. They believe that certain of the animal figures that are on the ground are reflections of constellations in the sky. The problem here, though, is that while some of these might be constellations, it doesn't explain the over 10,000 lines that go through the desert, the trapezoids, things that look like runways, other spirals and intersecting lines and geoglyphs. What was their purpose? We're here at the Nazca airport and we're going to interview Eduardo Haran, one of the well-known pilots here at Nazca, and he's the discoverer of some of the glyphs. We're going to ask him what he thinks about the Nazca plain and about some of his latest discoveries.
Welcome to Nazca in this moment. And I flew over the Nazca lines for 31 years. I discovered in the last years 354 designs. My first discovery is in 1991. And the last discovery is 1 month ago, no, in Ica It's a big condor. It's a beautiful, beautiful Paracas cavernas style. And I talked to my friends in the Peruvian Culture Institute, no, and confirmed this new discovery. No, it's a Paracas cavernas. It's all to Paracas necropolis, probably 500 years BC. Yeah? It's very nice. All the lines, in my opinion, is the rituals. No, the people need water. Okay, it's the rituals for the sun, moon, the ancient gods, and especially the condor. Why? The condors announce the water is coming to the coast. No, and it's the next period for the agriculture and for the life need the water. It probably is the only rituals, no, for this purpose. Now it's possible the ancient Nazcas use the textiles with feathers for the big kites, no, and fly over the lines. No, as the scientist said, why not? Okay, but I remember the conference in Mexico 10 years ago, and it's a little, it's a kite, 12 years, I don't remember exactly, and said me, hey doctor, excuse me, no, the ancient Nazcas don't see the lines in this life. The ancient Nazcas die and the spirit is up and see the lines. And for me it's plop. No, plop, I can't believe it, but it's, why not, you know?
Could humans also have had flight? I mean, like today we have airplanes and airships and of course big kites, and could humans have had somehow flight in ancient times too?
Oh yes. For me, you remember the legends, you know, and the Inca legends too, no? And say the Incas have the big wings, no, and fly all over the territories. Okay, we have the many legends. No, why? It's possible. Yes, for me it's possible.
One of the interesting things here at Nazca is the aqueduct system that's man-made. It's deep underground. It's made with a bunch of rocks and lintels that are holding in the aqueduct system. It's got these spiral wells and paths so that there's access to this underground system that's bringing water from the Andes down into the Nazca Valley and then bringing the water out to irrigate the fields. This system has been here for almost 2,000 years, it's thought. And this aqueduct system plays in one of the theories of the Nazca lines. And that theory is that the many aqueducts that are throughout the Nazca Valley are somehow also marked by some of the lines out in the desert. This theory, however, is very partial, and many researchers discount it altogether. The aqueduct system certainly does exist, but the over 10,000 lines in the desert would hardly seem to be marking some aqueduct system, really. Quite a few different theories about the Nazca lines, and maybe they all have something to do with the solution to this seemingly unsolvable mystery. We've got the talk of astronomical alignments and geoglyphs that are constellations on the plain. We've also heard theories of water pathways that are going through the desert, and perhaps some of the lines actually are marking some of these aqueducts. There's other theories that the lines were for various rituals that had to do with the annual coming of the water. And then we hear what are really the more intriguing theories. The ideas that the people here could actually fly in giant man-lifting kites, perhaps in some kind of primitive balloon technology, or even the ideas that somehow extraterrestrials were coming here, or that even ancient man had the ability of flight, the use of vimanas. Eduardo told us about the many legends of the birdmen of the Incas and how they could fly. So here we have the whole concept of ancient technology and the ancient technology of flight. Nearly everyone agrees that the geoglyphs and the lines and the trapezoids and the spirals and other strange figures on the Nazca Plain were meant to be seen from the air. Were they meant to be seen by vague gods in the sky who could be seen in the stars? Or were they flesh and blood gods who had flying machines and could fly over the plain? One thing is for certain, the Nazca Plain is like a giant canvas in the desert in which all these lines and figures and geometric trapezoids are etched onto this vast landscape. The question remains, though, who was it for? One of the strange legends here in Peru is of an ancient tunnel system. This tunnel system is supposed to start in Cuzco, around the Temple of the Sun there, and it goes to Saqsaywaman and other areas in the Andes. One of the legends is that the ancient treasure of the Incas was removed during the time of the conquest and put into this tunnel system, at least for a while. There are even stories that this tunnel system goes for hundreds of miles through the Andes and down into the deserts of Peru. Well, we're on the Pan American Highway going through the desert towards Ica, and we've stopped here at this roadside attraction called the Freedom Park. Freedom Park here kind of shows you that you can have a museum out here in the desert just about anywhere you want, really. Mark is saying there's tektites out here, plus moldavite. He's saying that this whole area got rained down with some kind of meteoric shower of melted stones and glass and tektites. Kind of makes you wonder if maybe some ancient atomic war was fought around here.
Yeah.
So Mark here is telling me that he knew Dr. Cabrera, who passed away in 2001 in Ica, where we just were, and visiting his museum. So, I mean, you think he had his own ideas and theories that he wanted to, you know, show to people, but so he had the rocks made to demonstrate.
Yeah, he had to complete the chain of the story in any way.
So did he believe then that humans and the dinosaurs lived together or something like that?
Well, I believe part of the story, maybe not humans exactly, but people from outer space have been here a long time ago, maybe watching the dinosaurs here, and someone could draw it on, but maybe it's true, maybe it's just fiction.
So, but what about his book? He wrote also that book, Message of the Ica Stones.
Yeah. Well, the book is, like I told you, maybe in his mind when he told me this book's gonna be in a movie someday, maybe in the future. So I think he
He
that
wanted
idea.
his book to
Yeah.
be made into a movie then,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's what he thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And he had his own ideas of flying saucers and Nazca and things like that, right?
Yeah, he have a lot of theories about the places, the mysterious places of this part of the south of Peru, you know, and he knew about a lot, really a lot. I think he saw in the future to make us famous, maybe on the world with this story. So I hope that.
He was from Ica, so he wanted Ica to be famous like that.
Yeah, because we have good stories here, really. Yeah, good stories about Paracas and Nazca. I think people's gonna be investigating about it and never gonna get the truth. Yeah,
But
maybe.
so you think? I mean, did he enjoy fooling a lot of people, or I mean,
Maybe he played with the brain of the people. Yeah, maybe, because he was very intelligent. So maybe it was his comic movie. You know.
his comic movie?
Yeah,
All right.
he was laughing all the time.
So you never really know what you're gonna find out here in the deserts of Peru. We've seen a lot of strange stuff on this trip. We saw Dr. Cabrera's strange cabinet of curiosities. We saw the weird cone heads in the Eco-Regional Museum. And then we saw the strange geoglyphs and lines at Nazca. It's been a long, strange trip. But if you do happen to come here to Peru, be sure you occasionally stop at some of the strange things that you find along the highway.